What should you do if there's a caring and reliable person by your side, but your heart remains silent? Is it worth agreeing to a relationship without love? Or should you wait for true feelings, even if the path is difficult? This story will challenge your ideas about happiness and choice. True to herself. Emma had always been a woman with a sensitive soul and a big heart. She was empathetic, supportive, and always saw the best in people. After a painful breakup with her first love, a man who betrayed her trust, Emma struggled for a long time to recover. She became more cautious, closed off, and stopped believing in genuine feelings, deciding never to let anyone get too close again. James was the complete opposite of her previous experience. Calm, dependable, and attentive, he never made grand declarations, but was always there when needed. For him, family and loyalty were not just words but the meaning of life. James knew how to listen, to support, never demanded the impossible, and never pressured Emma, always respecting her boundaries and fears. They met at work. Emma had just joined a new company in London, where James had held a managerial position for several years. At first, their relationship was purely professional, but gradually James began to notice not just a good colleague in Emma, but a woman he wanted to be close to. He started courting her gently, with respect and patience, and over time, a friendship blossomed between them, a foundation for their complicated but sincere relationship. Still, despite James's care and attention, Emma couldn't allow herself to believe in new feelings for a long time. She saw that he loved her, but she wasn't ready to open up again. James loved her. She could see it. Just a year ago, she had looked at another man with the same eyes, hanging on every word, eager to please, ready to do anything. But it had ended in heartbreak. The man who had sworn eternal love married someone else. And Emma found out not from him, but from colleagues who shared the amazing news with barely concealed mockery. That was when, suffocating and numb with pain, she forbade herself to love. James appeared in Emma's life a year later. Kind, attentive, caring. He courted her beautifully, protected her, and never asked for anything in return. One day, he gathered his courage and proposed. Emma didn't love him. She liked him. He was attractive, decent, reliable. Their relationship was wonderful, but it wasn't love, at least not for her. Marriage? She couldn't imagine it. "James, I'm not ready for marriage yet," Emma replied to his proposal, "but I'm willing to try." "So you don't want to marry me?" "It's not about you, it's about me. Let's just live together for now." James was visibly upset. He had dreamed that Emma would become his wife, that they would have a happy family and children. Living together without marriage was something he'd never considered. It just wasn't how he was raised. Emma's suggestion caught him off guard. "And you're really willing to do that?" "I am, Jamie," Emma said honestly in that moment. "I trust you." Trust, but not love, James thought. He understood everything. But he couldn't let go of the woman he loved. They lived well together. They hardly ever argued, easily solved everyday and financial problems, and never restricted each other's time with friends or family. They were always cheerful, positive, and welcoming. To outsiders, they seemed like the perfect couple. But it wasn't quite so. At first, James regularly asked Emma to marry him, suggested having a child. But she gently refused. "Let's wait a bit. I'm not ready." James would fall silent, but each time he thought, "She doesn't love me. She's just tolerating me. Why am I putting her through this?" After a few years, James resigned himself. He stopped hoping, stopped tormenting Emma with endless proposals and talk of children. Meanwhile, Emma was experiencing something entirely different. Memories of her old love gradually faded. She began to look more closely at the man beside her, who tried so hard to make her happy. More and more, she thought that no one was closer or dearer to her than James. That he was the only one she wanted to spend her life with. One morning, Emma woke up with a sudden thought. I love him. She was overjoyed by this revelation. James had already left for work, leaving breakfast for Emma on the table, as he always did. I'll cook something special. We'll have a romantic evening. I'll tell James the first love him. He'll be so happy. Emma dreamed, feeling as giddy as a schoolgirl. That evening, she was busy in the kitchen when the phone rang. Emma. James's embarrassed voice sounded resigned. Don't wait for me. I'm not coming home. What's happened? Emma tried to sound calm. I can't do this anymore. We'll talk tomorrow. I'll come for my things. Emma sat for a long time with the phone pressed to her ear, listening to the dial tone. She didn't fully understand what had happened, but she felt it was something terrible. The next day James came. As he packed his things, he avoided Emma's gaze. Emma, you know how much I love you. I thought my love would be enough for both of us. I was wrong. It's not enough. You don't want a family or children. I can't go on like this. I don't want to. So I've decided to start a new life. Emma wanted to tell James that everything had changed, that she had loved him for a long time. But she didn't have the chance because James continued. I've met another woman. Well, not met, we work together. She's nice, sweet, kind. I like her. James paused for a moment and went on. But the most important thing is, she loves me. She's been waiting for me. She dreams of a family. Do you understand? I spent the night at her place. Emma understood everything. She didn't say a word about her feelings. She just said, I'm happy for you. You deserve happiness. James left. Emma automatically went to the kitchen window, as she always did, to watch him drive away and wave goodbye. This time her hand wouldn't rise. She stood at the window for a long time. Neither she nor James knew that inside her was already a tiny life, a child who had just lost his father. James married quickly, eager to fulfill his dream of having a family and a child. His wife, Natalie, truly loved him and did everything to make him happy. She wanted a child desperately, but it didn't happen. After countless tests, it became clear that they would never have children. The news devastated James. The day he found out, he wandered the city like a wounded animal. His feet carried him to Emma's door. He hadn't seen her in nearly 3 years. Many times, James had wanted to catch a glimpse of the woman he still loved. But he avoided her, afraid he wouldn't be able to resist, that he'd leave Natalie, whom he could never truly love, and return to the one he'd left with a broken heart. Emma opened the door and silently let him in. James stood there, not knowing what to say, devouring Emma with his eyes. She had changed, become somehow different, more feminine. Emma waited, saying nothing. They stood facing each other, silent. Mummy! A little boy of about 3 ran out of the room. Seeing the unfamiliar man, he stopped and asked curiously, Who are you? Me. James looked at Emma, who immediately lowered her eyes. She quickly recovered. Come on, darling, what's happened? James watched them go. Is that your son? Did you get married? He asked Emma when she returned. He's our son, she replied quietly. And I'm not married. Why are you here? And you never told me? James was overwhelmed by emotion. Why? I didn't want to ruin your family or your happiness. Happiness? If I was ever happy, it was only with you. It didn't seem that way to you then. I just wanted to be loved. And I did love you. I just didn't have time to say it. I was a little too late. James rushed to Emma, but she stopped him. No. You have a wonderful wife. She doesn't deserve this. You can come see your son whenever you want. But only for him. Why? Can't we fix things? Are you ready to break someone else's life? I'm not. And I know for sure. You can't build happiness on someone else's pain. Seems we're not meant to be together. But our son is not to blame. What's his name? James realized he couldn't change Emma's mind. James. James Jr. Back home, James told Natalie everything. So you'll leave me now? She asked quietly. No. We'll stay together. But you need to know I have a son. He'll be coming here. And I really hope you two can become friends. Though, I still have to become friends with him myself. And Emma. Emma is wonderful. As always. Many years passed. Little Jamie grew up to be the spitting image of his father. Emma never remarried, though there were plenty of suitors. She never felt lonely. All these years she had two Jameses by her side. Her beloved son and his father, the dearest person in her life. And there was also Natalie, James's wife, who over time became Emma's closest friend. Few more years passed. James Jr. grew up and started school. He was a bright, kind boy, remarkably like his father, not just in his features, but in the way he spoke, smiled, and even in his habit of furrowing his brow thoughtfully when something didn't go his way. He combined an openness and inner strength that both Emma and James had always valued. From his very first days at school, Jamie proved himself to be a curious and responsible student. His teachers noted his attentiveness, neatness, and willingness to help his classmates. He quickly made friends but always remained a little different. He didn't get involved in childish squabbles, tried to make peace between others, and was always ready to listen and support. Sometimes, watching her son, Emma caught herself thinking that he was growing up too quickly, as if he understood more than a child his age should. James took an active part in his son's life. He often picked Jamie up for weekends, organized little adventures, trips to museums, the zoo, cycling in the park, or swimming at the local pool. James enjoyed helping his son with homework, especially maths and science, patiently explaining difficult topics, celebrating his successes, and supporting him through failures. Sometimes they would build model planes together, or read books in the evenings. James loved reading aloud and Jamie would listen completely absorbed. Emma watched these moments with gratitude. She understood how important it was for her son to feel the support of both parents, even if they weren't together. James was always punctual, never let them down, never forgot about school events, parents' evenings, or birthdays. He tried to be not just a father but a true friend to his son. Gradually, their lives settled into a rhythm where there was no room for resentment or reproach. Emma and James learned to communicate, to discuss important matters calmly, without unnecessary emotion. They both understood. The most important thing was Jamie's happiness and peace of mind. Natalie, contrary to Emma's initial fears, truly became her friend. At first, their relationship was cautious, but over time Natalie proved herself to be wise and kind-hearted. She didn't feel jealous of James's past, nor did she try to distance him from his son. On the contrary, she encouraged their relationship and tried to create a warm, safe atmosphere for Jamie whenever he visited. Gradually, trust grew between the two women. They often met, sometimes out of necessity to discuss Jamie's upbringing, and sometimes just for a cup of tea. Emma shared her worries, talked about Jamie's successes and struggles at school, and asked for advice. Natalie, in turn, shared her own thoughts, spoke about work, and about how difficult it could be to be the wife of a man who still carried a past love in his heart, even as he tried to be a good husband and father. Sometimes they would attend school events together, cheer Jamie on at sports competitions, or organize family picnics. In those moments, Emma felt that, despite all the trials, life could be harmonious and bright. She valued her friendship with Natalie, realizing that she had become not only an ally in raising Jamie, but a true friend, someone she could confide in, laugh or cry with, and share her deepest thoughts. Time passed, and their small but strong family learned to live in a new way. James and Emma supported each other. Natalie became part of their circle, and Jamie grew up surrounded by love, care, and mutual respect. For Emma, this was the most important thing. That her son knew he was loved, cared for, and could always rely on the support of adults, even if life didn't turn out the way she had once dreamed in her youth. But one day into their measured, almost idyllic life, disaster struck and turned everything upside down. It was an ordinary weekday, no different from any other. Emma was running late at work. A new project needed urgent completion, her manager was pushing for deadlines, and as always, she couldn't leave until she was sure everything was perfect. It was already dark when she, exhausted, was finally getting ready to go home. At that moment, her phone rang. Natalie's name flashed on the screen. There was panic in Natalie's voice, something Emma had never heard from this usually calm and composed woman. "Emma, can you come quickly? Jamie, he's gone missing." Emma's breath caught in her throat. Her heart plummeted. She could barely get a word out. "What do you mean missing? Where was he? What happened?" Her voice trembled, but she tried to stay calm. "We were in the park." Natalie spoke quickly, almost incoherently. "He was playing with some other children. I looked away for just a minute, and then he was gone. I've searched the whole park, asked everyone. He's nowhere. I don't know what to do." Emma didn't remember how she ran out of the office, how she rushed through the streets, not noticing people, cars, or the cold wind stinging her face. Only one thought hammered in her mind. Please let nothing have happened to him. When she arrived at the park, James and the police were already there. James looked as if he'd aged 10 years in an hour. He was running up and down the paths, explaining things to the police, then rushing back to Natalie, who sat on a bench, her face in her hands, sobbing silently. Emma went to her, put an arm around her shoulders, and felt her trembling. "We'll find him," Emma said firmly, though inside she was gripped by terror and her mind conjured the worst images. "We will find him." The police combed the park, questioned passersby, checked CCTV cameras. James couldn't sit still. He called friends, ran along the paths, returned to the police demanding news. Emma tried to stay strong, but her hands shook and a lump in her chest made it hard to breathe. Time dragged on painfully slowly. It felt like an eternity, though only a few hours had passed. With every minute, anxiety grew and hope faded. Natalie barely spoke, only whispered, I'm sorry. As if to Jamie, to God, to herself. Emma remembered seeing her son off to school that morning, his smile, his promise to tell her something important that evening. She prayed silently that he was safe, that he was just lost, that this was all a terrible misunderstanding. When it was completely dark and it seemed there was no strength left, a call came through. A police officer, speaking into his radio, suddenly turned to the parents. "We've found him. The boy's been found on the other side of the city. He's safe." Emma's knees buckled. James caught her arm. Natalie burst into tears. They were taken to the station where Jamie sat, frightened but unharmed. He ran to his mother, hugged her tightly, then clung to his father. Later, it turned out that a stranger had lured Jamie away, promising to show him a puppy. Remembering his mother's warnings never to go with strangers, Jamie broke free and ran, but got lost in an unfamiliar neighborhood. He wandered the streets for a long time until a woman noticed him and took him to the nearest police station. That night was a true ordeal for everyone. When they returned home, Natalie, exhausted, fell asleep on the sofa. James and Emma were left alone in the kitchen. They sat in silence for a long time, unable to find words. Only now, when it was all over, did the full horror of what had happened sink in. "I nearly lost my mind," James finally whispered, staring out the window. If anything had happened to him. Emma came over and hugged him silently. In that moment there was no past, no grievances, no unspoken words. Only shared pain, fear, and the love for their son that they had both hidden for so long. That night they both realized what bound them was more than just parenthood. It was a deep grown-up connection through anxiety, through trials, through the ability to forgive and to be there when it truly mattered. After that terrifying night when Jamie went missing, something shifted in the lives of all three adults. Outwardly, everything seemed to return to normal. Jamie went back to school. Emma and James continued to share responsibilities for their son, and Natalie tried to be the attentive, caring wife. But beneath the surface, tension was building, something that could not be ignored. Natalie changed. She became more anxious, often waking in the night to listen for every sound, checking that the doors were locked, that James hadn't left the lights on in the hallway. More and more, she found herself reliving the events of that day, not just the fear and panic, but also the way James and Emma had supported each other, how they seemed to communicate without words, as if there was an invisible but unbreakable bond between them. At first, Natalie tried to dismiss these thoughts. She told herself it was just the aftermath of stress, that any mother in her place would feel the same. But with each passing day, her anxiety grew. She began to notice how James lingered a little longer at Emma's, how they exchanged glances when talking about Jamie, how easily and naturally they understood each other. Natalie increasingly felt like an outsider, as if she were watching someone else's life from the sidelines. James too was different. After the fear for his son, he became even more attentive to Jamie, but he also found himself drawn to Emma more than ever. He couldn't forget how they had stood together in the kitchen that night, silently holding each other, as if only together could they survive what had happened. James tried to be a good husband, spending more time with Natalie, suggesting walks or trips out of town, but more and more often he caught himself thinking about Emma. He didn't allow himself to cross any lines, but inside he was confused and didn't know how to deal with his feelings. Natalie found herself growing jealous. She didn't make scenes or voice accusations, but there was a new wariness and vulnerability in her eyes. She became quieter at dinner, sometimes leaving the room to hide her tears. James noticed but didn't know how to help. He felt guilty but couldn't change his heart. One evening, after Jamie had gone to bed, Natalie couldn't hold it in any longer. She paced the flat for a long time, gathering her courage, then approached James, who was sitting in the lounge with a book. "You still love her, don't you?" she asked quietly, almost in a whisper, but her voice was full of pain that couldn't be hidden. James slowly put down his book and looked at his wife. He didn't deny it, didn't make excuses. I can't control it, he admitted honestly. But I'm with you. You are my family. Natalie clenched her fists to keep from crying, but the tears came anyway. And what about me? She asked, her voice trembling. Have I always been second best to you? For the first time in many years, James wondered if he was doing the right thing. Was he hurting Natalie, deceiving himself? He suddenly saw clearly how much pain his indecision had caused her, how often she had been left in the shadow of his past, how rarely he had told her he loved her. James felt he was at a crossroads, to continue living as if everything was fine, or finally to be honest with himself and with Natalie, no matter how painful the truth might be. That night, neither of them could sleep. Each was lost in their own thoughts, but both understood. Their lives would never be the same. Something important had changed, and now they would have to find a new path. Towards themselves, towards each other, towards the truth, however bitter it might be. Meanwhile, Emma's life took a turn for the worse. It began when her company underwent a change in management. The new bosses were demanding, intolerant of mistakes, and paid little attention to the years of dedication their employees had given. The atmosphere in the office became tense. People walked on eggshells, afraid to say the wrong thing. Emma, as always, worked diligently, but one day she was called into the manager's office and told her department was being made redundant. The news hit her hard. She had given so much of herself to this company, invested so much time and energy. The first days after being let go felt like a fog. Emma couldn't believe it was happening to her. The search for a new job dragged on. There were few vacancies, the requirements were high, and competition was fierce. She sent out CVs, went to interviews, but everywhere she was met with polite rejections. Money was running out and she had to economize on everything, buying only the essentials, giving up small pleasures, even choosing cheaper groceries. James, learning of her difficulties, immediately offered help. He brought groceries, offered her money, invited Jamie to stay with him on weekends so Emma could focus on job hunting or simply rest. But despite her exhaustion and anxiety, Emma was proud of her independence. She didn't want to take more than necessary, didn't want to feel indebted. She thanked James but refused his money, determined to manage on her own. It was during this difficult period that a new person entered her life, Andrew, the father of one of Jamie's classmates. He was a widower, raising his son alone. At first, they simply exchanged greetings at school events, or a few words when picking up their children. But one day when Emma was running late, Andrew offered her a lift home. They started talking in the car and discovered they had much in common. Similar views on life, shared values, even a similar sense of humor. Gradually, Andrew became a more frequent presence in their lives. He didn't make grand declarations, didn't rush things, and never tried to take anyone's place. He was simply there, helping with repairs, fixing a leaky tap, taking Jamie to football practice, or offering a kind word. He was a good listener, never interrupted, and always seemed to know just what to say to lift Emma's spirits. She valued his calmness, reliability, and the way he never pressured her or demanded anything. James noticed the changes. He began calling Emma more often, asking about her day, offering help, inviting her to family gatherings. He was tormented by jealousy, though he knew he had no right to feel that way. He saw how Andrew cared for Emma and Jamie, how the boy was drawn to this new friend, and it hurt. James tried not to show his feelings, but sometimes he couldn't help himself and would say something sharp to Emma, only to regret it later. Natalie saw it all and suffered in silence. She noticed how James was changing, becoming more thoughtful, more withdrawn, often lost in his own world. She understood that his heart still held love for Emma, and it caused her pain. But Natalie didn't make scenes or voice complaints. She simply tried to be there for her husband, hoping that, in time, things would settle. For Emma, this was a new chapter. Difficult but full of hope. She was learning to accept help, to trust people, to open herself to new feelings. And although the future was uncertain, for the first time in a long while, she felt she was not alone, that there was someone she could rely on. The divorce went through quietly, almost matter-of-factly, without loud arguments or accusations. Natalie packed her things, hugged Jamie goodbye, and stood at the door for a long time, unable to leave. James helped her carry her suitcases to the taxi, and they parted almost in silence. Too much had been said and felt in the past months. Natalie moved to another city, where she had relatives and a new job. She started a new life, trying not to look back or dwell on what couldn't be saved. James was left alone in their once cozy flat. At first, he felt lost. In the evenings, he would catch himself waiting for Natalie to come home, listening for her familiar footsteps in the hallway, but the flat was silent. He saw Jamie often, tried to be a support for him, helped Emma with household matters, took Jamie for weekends, and brought him to clubs and the cinema. But James himself couldn't bring himself to make the first move towards Emma. There were too many doubts, fears, and insecurities. Meanwhile, Emma grew closer to Andrew. He turned out to be exactly the person she needed during this difficult period. Reliable, calm, able to find joy in small things, and always ready to support her in tough times. Andrew never rushed things, never demanded quick decisions from Emma, but was simply there, helping with repairs, cooking dinner, picking Jamie up from school when Emma had interviews or urgent matters. Gradually, Jamie grew to love Andrew as if he were his own father. They built model planes together, played chess, and went on walks in the woods. James watched all this from the sidelines. He was tormented by jealousy, but he knew he had missed his chance. He suffered in silence, not sharing his feelings with anyone, not even Emma. Sometimes it seemed to him that everything was already decided, that Emma had a new life in which there was no place for him. But he couldn't stop loving her, couldn't stop hoping that one day things might change. Then one day Jamie fell seriously ill. A high fever, weakness. The doctors insisted on hospitalization. For Emma, it was a real blow. She didn't leave her son's side, spent nights in the hospital, held his hand during IVs. Andrew was there too, bringing food, clean clothes, supporting Emma when she was at her lowest. James, upon hearing about his son's illness, came to the hospital immediately. He sat by Jamie's bed, read him stories, told him about his own childhood, and tried not to show his worry. That night, after Jamie had fallen asleep and Andrew had gone to get some tea, James, for the first time in many years, decided to speak honestly with Emma. They sat in the corridor, tired and worn out, but suddenly there was a closeness between them that neither time nor distance could destroy. "I still love you," James said quietly, looking at the floor. "And I always will. But if you're happy with Andrew, I won't stand in your way." Emma looked at him for a long time, as if searching for answers in his eyes. "I don't know what the future holds," she finally said. "But I'm grateful to you for everything. For our son, for your love, for always being there." Jamie soon recovered. The illness passed, and laughter returned to their home. A few months later, Andrew proposed to Emma, and she accepted. It was a conscious, calm decision. Not an escape from the past, but a step towards a new life. James remained in their lives as a father, a friend, a close person. He often visited, helped with repairs, organized family celebrations, and was there in difficult moments. Warm, respectful relationships developed between him, Emma, and Andrew. Each of them found their own place in this complicated but genuine family. This story is about the importance of staying true to yourself and your feelings. Despite James's care and kindness, Emma never deceived him or herself. She never stopped believing in true love and continued to wait for that deep, unmistakable feeling. She refused to settle for a relationship out of convenience or comfort, and instead searched for what truly resonated in her heart. In the end, Emma found her love, the one she had dreamed of, the one worth enduring loneliness and hardship for. Yet she remained grateful to James for all the good they had shared. She never hid from him that he would always be a close person, a friend, and a wonderful father to their son. Their relationship became an example of respect, honesty, and the ability to let each other go for the sake of real happiness. And what about you? Do you think it's worth agreeing to a relationship without love for the sake of peace? Or should you wait for true feelings, even if the path is difficult? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story resonates with you, please like, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to click the bell so you don't miss new videos. Thank you for being with us.